Hi, everybody. It's Misty Lynch here from Soundview Financial Advisors, and I wanted to provide an update for you on the market and the economy in September, and also the current government shutdown and how that can impact you financially and certain things that you should do during times like this if you want to protect your finances and your investments and really just try to get through it in the best way possible. I just got back from a vacation. I was at Disney last week, so thank you anybody who reached out to me. Thank you for your patience. I will be getting back to you very soon this week. And it was an amazing experience. I think the ride that I was the most concerned about was the flight home with during a government shutdown with the TSA and kind of some anxiety and fears on that. Luckily, everything went fine. The Orlando airport has had quite a impressive glow up since the last time I'd flown through there, and things went fine at Logan. But there are certain things that are now starting to come out in the news with some experiences with people calling out, some delays. So if you're traveling, be sure to be aware of your timing. Because again, expenses can come up when we're inconvenienced, when we have delays, when we have cancellations and things like that. So that's just for my fall travelers. If there's anything going on that you might need to consider, maybe planning a little bit extra time, a little bit extra money for those events. But other than that, it was fantastic. And I hadn't gone in, so it was 45 years in the making, but worth the wait. I absolutely loved it. So back to work and back to the economy. So the stock market in September was kind of a mixed month. The first half of the year, as you know, was very strong, and the S&P and the Nasdaq, they pulled back slightly in September as investors are trying to balance, optimism for, for growing, businesses, but also slowing inflation and concerns about interest rates throughout the rest of the year if they happen to stay higher for longer. So that's something that had an impact. We've seen some slight pullback, but nothing dramatic, nothing sharp or alarming. Energy prices have risen again. Oil is trading around $90 a barrel, and that's adding some pressure to consumer prices. And it could also keep inflation higher a little longer, longer than the Fed would like as we head into the fall. Meanwhile, bonds remained elevated. The 10-year Treasury is hovering around 4.5%. And for investors, that means that bonds are finally becoming competitive again, but it's keeping borrowing costs higher still for people across the country. So, on the economic side, inflation continues to moderate, even though it's slow. The job market remains strong, but we're starting to see some cooling, slower hiring, and fewer job openings. And consumers are still spending, but credit card balances are increasing, which signals that higher prices and higher interest rates are taking a toll, even if people continue to spend. So while the economy remains resilient overall, we're definitely moving into a more cautious phase. And now the government shutdown adds another layer of uncertainty. So, as you know, the federal government, as of today, October 7th, we are still in a government shutdown, meaning that many agencies have closed or are operating with limited staff. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers, contractors are either furloughed or working without pay until Congress reaches a new funding agreement. And this is already affecting parts of the economy. As you know, I just mentioned travel with TSA, but federal paychecks are paused. This impacts household income for many families. FHA and VA loan processing is slowed down, which is going to impact the housing market. Economic data releases like the inflation and employment reports are being delayed, which is making it harder for policymakers and markets to assess the current environment. And market volatility has ticked up as investors react to this political uncertainty. While the disruptions are significant, history tells us that they are usually temporary, and markets tend to recover just fine once funding is restored and essential services continue to operate in the meantime. So, for individuals and families, this can be harder on the day-to-day paycheck income and more so than on the investment side. The stock market is still moving along like honestly, like this isn't even really happening at this time. And so I do think the limited guidance and the reporting will impact how employers feel about hiring. But I do feel like stock, like market wise, There will not be dramatic changes to the portfolio as a result of a government shutdown, but it is something to think about when it comes to your finances. So, one of the things I recommend in this environment or any other time of uncertainty, whether it's at your company or in general, prioritize your essential expenses. Focus on what matters most. That's going to be housing, utilities, food, healthcare costs for sure could be changed depending on how this, how Congress reaches a funding agreement. So that is something to consider. And also, things that are discretionary. I just mentioned going on a vacation. This was something that was booked quite a long time ago, but it isn't something necessarily, if you are concerned or you're impacted by this directly, obviously you're going to want to pause those discretionary spending and kind of redirect your sources to essentials. If you have to contact any creditors or lenders because of this, or if you're in any sort of lending process, do it early. If your paycheck, your income has been impacted, talk to your lenders before the due dates. Many banks, credit card companies, mortgage servicers, they offer hardship programs or deferments for government employees during and government contractors during shutdowns. So reach out. This is something that is widespread and it is not necessarily at any fault of, any individual person. This is something that we can't really control, which again is another reason to keep that emergency fund fully funded. If you have one, might be the time to use it. If you don't, it's a good time to start building one, especially when your, income resumes, or if you're not working for the government, it is always a good idea to have one. Even if you start with a small savings buffer, 1 month of expenses can make a huge difference during disruptions like this. It can mean not selling an investment that you like. It can mean not going into credit card debt. It could mean a lot of things that can help you get through this temporary, income crunch. And then also postpone, any new debt right now. Interest rates are still high. It is important to kind of, credit applications could be slowed down for certain things. If you can postpone any bigger or larger purchases or new credit applications, it might be a good idea to do that until things stabilize, as we still may see interest rate cuts throughout this year. And then with your long-term investments, I haven't heard from anybody directly, regarding this. I think we've been through this before, but shutdowns are usually short-term political events. They're not based on the economic fundamentals, really. So, historically, the markets rebound quickly. They haven't even really reacted in this one, to be honest. And if we're thinking long-term future for this money, which most of us are, it is important to stick with your plan and avoid any emotional or, quick decisions when it comes to where you want to keep your money. We'll definitely continue to monitor the economic conditions, including the rates, including the rest of the year, as far as, what we see for trends. And then we will adjust, obviously, the portfolio as needed. But just know this is something that we're on top of and that, we are continuing to look at opportunities in the market and also ways to, protect and grow your wealth. So I know this can feel uneasy, especially when the news cycle is dominated by uncertainty. Whichever news you watch, it's all breaking news in your face 24/7. And so I know that that can be very stressful and uneasy. And if you are a government employee or you are anyone in your family is impacted by this, it certainly is stressful and difficult. So just know that we're here to help you, to chat with you if you need to, if anything comes up during this time, or you get any letters, or anything that's confusing, anything that you're not sure if it's real or not. Always, our team is here to help you and to take a look at that with you. And, it's always a good time to just make sure that you're sticking with your financial plan. It's the fall. We will be reaching out to set up some, year-end meetings. Definitely important to make those a priority so that we can reconnect and discuss, what's going on personally for you, as that's going to be different from every other person that you speak with. So thank you so much, for working with us and choosing us. And we will talk again when I provide an October update, and hopefully everyone will be back to work.